Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked you what you thought of the 8th and final episode of Skeleton Crew. I'll also then be reading and responding to a few of the comments left on the poll as usual, and we also have the Nielsen ratings to take a look at for the 4th episode of Skeleton Crew, or the week of the 4th episode. And so, getting to some numbers, let's start with the poll results, where we'll see that 33% said this was a good episode or they enjoyed it. 11% said it was okay and enjoyed it for the most part. There was then 1% who said it was bad or didn't enjoy it. And a final 55% who said, I'm not watching the show. Which, no, isn't a good number for the show, but it is one that has been coming down week after week after week. Last week, it was about 57% that said they hadn't watched the show or weren't watching the show. At the start, it was more around 63 to 64%, so we have seen close to a 10% increase in viewership here, which is pretty significant when you think about it. I know this isn't the biggest sample size ever, but it is about 10,000 people, 10,000 Star Wars fans. As I always say, if you are watching my videos or getting my poll in your feed, you're probably a Star Wars fan, right? And so we have seen an increase in viewership. The positive word of mouth that the show has been getting for the most part has changing minds about whether they want to watch it or not. And it seems like they are enjoying it. That 1% hasn't been growing at all. It's been 1% pretty much every week, I think. I don't think it ever got above or below that. And so more and more people are tuning in. More and more people seem to be enjoying it. However, when we do look at the Nielsen ratings, we don't see Skeleton Crew there at all. As I've said before, they only give us the top 10 shows for the week, and Skeleton Crew was once again not among them after missing the first 2 weeks it could have made this, with the first 2 episodes being the same week, of course, and then episode 3. This would be episode 4 here. And as we can see, it didn't get at the very least 326 million minutes, which is, when you compare it to other shows that we have gotten, or other Star Wars shows that we have gotten the numbers for, this isn't good at all. This would be the lowest rated Star Wars show yet. And though, yes, we have been seeing positive results in my weekly polls, it is not being reflected in the wider audience just yet. We'll have to see if by some chance, if some miracle occurs where it does, by the end, sneak into the top 10, and we can kind of get some better understanding of what the viewership looks like, because right now we have virtually no idea. It could be 325 million minutes this week, or it could be significantly less. Again, we only get these top 10 numbers. All right, and now we move on to some comments, but not before once again just saying thank you to everybody who votes, comments, or watches these or any of my videos across both the channels, and a big thank you to those who support the channels on Patreon. Thank you so much for that. Also, a big thank you to those who have left super thanks on my videos. I appreciate that as well. Whatever you do, however you support the channel, be it a comment or just watching, I thank you. That said, let's start with the top rated comment left on the poll, which this time comes to us from Saganya. I think I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. But they said, to give a sports analogy, Skeleton Crew was like a first overall pick in the draft on a really bad tanking team. He had a great season, but couldn't possibly alter the fate of the franchise on his own amidst all the dysfunction and lack of talent. And I do enjoy my sports analogies, and I find this one to be pretty good and fitting as well. I do feel like Skeleton Crew is kind of like a first-round pick, right? It's a really good show that came onto a really bad team, aka Disney Star Wars, and just couldn't turn the team around all by itself. You're going to need a few more first-round picks or to trade for some real talent in order to truly get this team back on track, to get the fans excited again, to get them coming to the stadium or the movie theater and supporting the team. I mean, Skeleton Crew is a great show, but I really don't think it moved the needle, if you will, in the fandom. The numbers are saying that. I don't know how else we can look at all these numbers where people just aren't watching it and come to any other conclusion. But, well, more and more people are watching it. There's a chance it could, in the long run, be a success, I suppose. We don't know the internal numbers from Disney. We don't know just how well it is doing, say, right now after the fact, after all that good word of mouth has been put out there. It could be significant. It could be a drop in the ocean. We don't really know. All we do know is the numbers we have are not good, and that, no, this first round pick didn't take the team to the playoffs, if you will. All right, and now we move on to this comment from Lone Battle Droid, who said, I think it needed an epilogue at the end, like they jump ahead a few months later and see how the kids at Atten are adjusting to the New Republic life. Maybe see the kids and their parents preparing to go on a space road trip or something. And that may have been the perfect ending to see them packing up the space camper and ready to go hit the road or the skies, I suppose, or space. That would have been very fitting. Maybe a little cheesy, a little too on the nose. That said, I really would have liked some type of epilogue. I think that was my biggest issue with the finale, is we didn't get any of those questions about what happens next answered at all. We see the New Republic are there and are no doubt going to open dialogue with them and probably bring them back into the New Republic and give them a new purpose. I don't think the great work continues. I don't think they just keep making or minting tons of credits. But yeah, I think even a couple minutes to try to wrap up that story, because that was a big part of the story, right? That was a big part of the show, was AT-AT in itself. What is going on with this planet? What is going to happen to these people? And now they've been opened up to the galaxy, and we don't have a clue what happens next, which is okay if we thought maybe there was going to be a season 2. But again, we go back to the numbers. Highly, highly unlikely we get a season 2. And so we're left having to wonder what is going to happen next. Maybe we hear or learn something about it in a different show. Probably going to get a comic book series or a novel at some point that might go into some of this. That might give us some answers about what happened initially to take the planet off the grid, essentially why everybody seemed to forget about it, or the old Republic forgot about it, to the point where the New Republic didn't know it was there. I don't know, a lot of questions that I don't think an epilogue would have been able to answer all of them, but a few little things would have been nice instead of virtually nothing in that department. All right, and kind of going along with that last one, we have this one from Captain Phoenix Official YouTube, who said, "The ending was abrupt, but it was overall a great finale. I'm honestly surprised just how airtight the script for this show has been. I didn't find myself asking 105 questions like I did with The Acolyte. Definitely a step in the right direction." And what I think they're saying here, and I agree, is that when it comes to character motivation and the plot itself, the actual story, not necessarily everything else going around it with Manhattan, like I was just talking about, it all made sense. Characters did the things that they were supposed to do based on what we knew of the characters, or the twist with them, with, say, Jod when he kind of turned on the kids. It wasn't surprising because we kind of understood he was that kind of guy. It's not like The Acolyte, where sometimes you felt like characters did things because the plot needed them to. Here it felt like the characters were driving the plot. I didn't have questions about why this was happening, why the kids would do this, or why Jod would do that, or why the parents were acting this way. That all worked. Again, my questions are mainly with AT-AT in itself, the mystery around everything else. But the story itself was on point. It was very tight writing. It was very well done, and that left me with virtually no questions other than maybe where do these characters go next? Okay, now we move on to this comment from Cadillac DeMille, who said, "It was so loosely connected to the sequels that if they scrapped them and made new sequels, this show could still fit as long as the new sequels have the New Republic in them." And yes, I know the saying that all roads lead to the sequel trilogy, but this road doesn't necessarily lead right to it. It is a roundabout path at the most, you could say. There are no real connections of any kind to it, which maybe will help some people decide they want to watch it, that this isn't like setting it up. There were those rumors before that, oh, it's just going to be that the Sith had been controlling this planet and using it to fund everything they're doing, but no, nothing like that. But anyway, as a lot of people said, what they really liked about the show is it was a standalone series that wasn't connected to anything and everything else. It isn't setting up the sequels. It isn't trying to be a big key component of the Mandoverse. It was a fun show with new characters, and that was it. It didn't have to be anything more or less than that. Moving right along, we have a comment here from Joshua Wells, who said, "It was nice to see the New Republic finally do something. 8 X-Wings, 2 B-Wings, 1 CR-90 Corvette, more than what the New Republic did in Mando Season 3. And like we were just talking about, the show really isn't connected to anything else or isn't seemingly influenced by even what is going on in the rest of the Mandoverse. Well, the Mandoverse has been influenced by the sequel trilogy, I think, in its portrayal of the New Republic. I think one of the main reasons why we see it kind of being a little incompetent and like it has been infiltrated by agents of the Empire who are kind of undermining it is because they do want to set up its failure in the sequel trilogy, why it was just like blown out of the sky and that was it. It just fell apart after that. There was no sort of counteroffensive launched by them at all. They just crumbled to the First Order and that was it. And so, unfortunately, you could certainly argue that seems to be why the New Republic is not necessarily shown to be either competent or shown in any respect like it was here, where they pretty quickly show up, maybe a little too quickly show up and save the day. There was also the fact that they just opened fired on the pirate ship above a city, which I saw some comments on, and I myself, when I was watching it, thought, well, I don't know that you want to just start shooting a pirate ship above a civilian populated city and potentially have it crash land and kill thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. But I think in the interest of keeping the action going and not having to drag it out, they just opened fired, and conveniently enough, it didn't crash into the city. It kind of floated off, and I think it crashed into a river or something like that. Next up here, we have a comment from Whimsy Chocolate, who said, watching the show with my kids has been the best Star Wars experience we've had in a long time. My kids have rewatched each episode multiple times in anticipation for the next episode. They laughed, they cheered, they cried. My son lost it when SM-33 got decapitated. Sure, it wasn't a perfect show, but it captured that special Star Wars feeling of wonder and adventure that I have missed so much. And though maybe not the perfect show, as you said, or the perfect show for everybody, I do think it was the perfect show for families. I have seen a lot of comments like this one from people who said it was great to just get to sit down with my kids and watch something that was Star Wars, that felt like Star Wars to me, that got them interested in Star Wars and asking questions and just loving it. This is what they needed to do, I feel like, a long time ago. As I've said before, I think the biggest issue Disney has had, or one of them, is getting young people interested in this franchise. I don't think the sequels really did that, as I've also said before. I think that generation saw Marvel as their Star Wars. And so this was the first time that I saw something and I'm like, yeah, I bet you a lot of young people are going to watch this, they're going to love this, and they're going to be potentially lifelong Star Wars fans just from this, if they can, follow it up, if Disney can follow it up, and if they go back and watch some of the other stuff. But this is a good hook into Star Wars for young people. And at the same time, it was something that adults can sit down and really, really enjoy. It was, in some ways, the perfect Star Wars show, even if, again, not a perfect show. A really, really, really good and enjoyable one. But no, nothing is perfect. But it was perfect for what it needed to be. Alright, and the final comment then comes to us from Roger Palsgrove, who said, I'm still in shock that this came from modern Disney Star Wars. Felt like it was better than it had a right to be. Others have said it, and I agree. The showrunners had a specific goal and achieved it, something to that effect. And totally agree. It's like I was just saying, they set out to make a very, very good family-friendly show that people of all ages could sit down and enjoy, and that's what they made. It didn't have to, as we again were talking about before, have to be a direct road to the sequel trilogy that set up Palpatine's return or something like that. It didn't have to be just another nugget or fragment of the Mandoverse. It didn't have to be that, oh, these pirates are going to be the new main antagonist of the Mando and Grogu movie or something like that. It was its own thing. It knew the audience it was going for, and it worked for what it wanted to be. Again, it's not the best show I have ever seen in my life, but it is certainly one of the best shows, maybe the best show of this nature that I've ever seen. And even though the ratings weren't there, which is ultimately what it really needs to accomplish for Star Wars, right? It may have lured in some younger fans, but clearly not a ton of them, at least not yet. Maybe that'll change as time goes on. But it was great for what it was. It achieved what it wanted to achieve, even if it wasn't a smashing success in the viewership department. Alright, I think that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you thought of the finale of Skeleton Crew. What did you think of this 8th and final episode? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.